What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Aapl, Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and many other tickers. And break down some very important information about what's going on with the charts, what's happening with the big earnings affecting the markets, and what's going on with the economic calendar. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. This offer ends in just 2 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. So, looking at the market right now, we're continuing to look relatively weak, and we have some potential bearish setups that are developing. But for this week, we're going to be watching Aapl very carefully, as Aapl has earnings very soon, and we have some other important events coming out soon. But first, I want to talk about some data affecting the markets and what's happening with earnings before I start breaking down the charts. So for now, we have the other technical indicators still looking quite weak as we're seeing extreme fear taking over the markets. Sentiment is looking very bearish, and we're continuing to see bad news coming out about Apple's potential sales in China, more geopolitical issues between the US and China, which is still affecting Aapl, not to mention how earnings have looked so far. They've been quite mixed overall, some beats, some misses here and there. It's going to be very important to follow earnings as time goes on. Now, moving forward, the market is still at extreme fear on the fear and greed index as well. And this is important because this tells us there could be even more selling coming very soon. But because we're at these extremes, this tends to be when the market is getting ready to bottom very soon. But for now, I'm not calling the bottom yet. There is a risk of more downside and the market could continue to sink lower. But we're going to be watching some key supports and see where the market tries to see buyers stepping in as time progresses. Now, for the economic calendar, we have the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index coming out tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then at 11:30 a.m., we have the 3-month and the 6-month bill auctions. Now, this could cause some high volatility, so just be very wary of that for the first 2 hours of the trading day. So watch this all very carefully and just know the market's going to be kind of cool after all this data is out. And then looking at Tuesday, we have some data coming out, some employment costs pieces of data before the market opens, more housing numbers for the price index, then the Chicago PMI and more consumer confidence reports. So some more data, but nothing as big as Wednesday, as we have the FOMC meeting and we have Jerome Powell giving a very important speech about the future of the Fed's monetary policy. So with FOMC on Wednesday, this is going to cause a big move for the stock market, and this could cause the market to either continue selling off or it could cause the market to bounce heavily and start to squeeze lots of shorts. We're going to be watching this very carefully on Wednesday. It's going to be the most important day of the week, in my opinion, next to Thursday, because on Thursday, we also have some massive earnings, right? We have Apple's earnings on Thursday after the market closes. That's also going to be very important as Apple's going to dictate how the entire market moves. For Wednesday, we have PayPal and Roku. This is going to be the second most important earnings for the week. And besides that, for Tuesday, we have AMD and Pfizer. And then for tomorrow, we have SoFi, McDonald's, and just a couple of others. But SoFi and McDonald's are going to be two of the biggest ones for tomorrow. Nothing else is going to be too big for earnings until we get to like Tuesday through Thursday. So we're going to be watching these very carefully. Now for the charts, things are still not looking the best because on Aapl, we have a potential bear flag developing. This thing's on a slight uptrend. We're getting very close to our important EMAs. So if you look at Aapl, you will notice that on the 4-hour time frame, we're getting very close to our 20 EMA right over here. And I think on the daily, we're actually not too far from the 20 as well. So you can see the 20 EMA and the 200 EMA happen to be very close to one another. So we're going to be watching the 5 EMA and then like the 20 at 171 if we do get above the 5. But this basically tells us that there's going to be some tight resistance between 170 and 171. So what could happen is these imbalances try to get filled. We see Aapl just push the market up a little bit. The market tries to rebound a tiny bit tomorrow. We see Aapl, push maybe 1 to 2 points, and then we're going to see a big rejection off the bear flag. So there's a big risk of this potentially happening. So we're going to be watching this channel very carefully on Aapl. Do we continue to maintain? And if we get a break, that's going to give us the signal for the market to start to slow down. So we're stuck in this channel. If Aapl goes up like this, which I think is going to happen tomorrow, we kind of like pump a little bit. We're going to try to fill this imbalance, but we might fail to get all the way up here. And and that happens to be aligning with our 5 and 200 EMAs on the daily, leading to a potential sell-off after that as time goes on for Monday. So we could see like a pop and a drop, and this may continue going into Tuesday for the final day of October to remain very, very weak. This is the most likely possibility looking at the current technical setup, and that tells me that SPY and these other tickers may follow a very, very similar trend. I think Apple's going to dictate the market. I think that this trend is going to continue with the algorithms as time goes on. As far as SPY goes, we have some imbalances we make an attempt to fill. We also have a potential like bear flag forming, so I could see this thing try to rebound a little bit. And part of why I'm saying that is because of the pattern that has developed historically on the daily. You will notice that when we have 3 sell-off days in a row, we tend to see like a small dead cat bounce. If you want to go there, at least in attempts to get back up just for a day or so before this thing continues lower. So you can see we had 3 sell-off days here. SPY rebounds a tiny bit, then we continue to sell off, right? And then another example would be like from the last couple of weeks where we had 2 sell-off days, small little rebound, then we sold off harder, 3 sell-off days, 2 days of rebounding before it sold off further. We just had 3 sell-off days, so we might see a little rebound, a tiny little rebound, which could end up just failing, and we may just continue to sell off approaching the FOMC meeting for Wednesday. So that's what I'm anticipating. I think that we're going to see a little rebound, a tiny little one. It's not going to be that big, and then the market's just going to continue to sell off. We still look very weak on the daily chart. We look very weak on the 4-hour time frame simultaneously as the market is continuing to weaken. So I believe the most likely possibility would be some kind of like bear flag like setup. We could be flagging right here if we do end up holding this support. And we could see SPY uptrend just temporarily before we see this thing continue to sell off. So look for a little rebound. Slight little rebound doesn't have to be that crazy or anything too huge. I think we could see this thing make its way right back up towards this resistance at 412. If we get above it, watch these imbalances to get filled. We could get very close to this like 412.5 area, possibly even like 413. I mean, if we do end up breaking it, 413.5 is another resistance to watch for since we have this imbalance here. So either 412 or 413.5 could be retested. Then this thing could just reject and just continue to sell off approaching the FOMC meeting. That is still on the cards and very probable in my honest opinion. So it's got to be one of those two. That's where I'm leaning towards. The market kind of like rebounds a bit for Monday. We retest 412.5. Maybe we go to 413. That's a possibility, but it may be a stretch. And then we just reject for the ending of Monday going into Tuesday, and the market just sells off further, and we just continue to break down. So if SPY loses 409 as support, this thing has potential to come all the way down towards 404. That's the next like critical support. We're going to be watching 408. We have some support there, but not as strong as 404. That's where the next critical level is going to be. So we're going to be watching that carefully if we do end up getting a big break. So just be very careful as selling could become very aggressive. If you want to be bullish, I mean, you want to see this thing get above 414 and hold it, then there could be some potential, but it's looking unlikely. The market's still on a very strong downtrend, and we could just continue to sell off for the next couple of days. But don't forget, guys, even if we do sell off more and more, everything could change on Wednesday depending on the Fed's policies. Everything could change with Jerome Powell, so we'll just see what happens until then. Looking forward, I think that the QQQ is going to follow the same trend. I think that Apple is going to dictate the QQQ. I believe we have a potential flag forming here. We have this resistance trend line to be watching for. I believe that the QQQ still looks kind of weak at the same time. I think it's going to get a small rebound towards this 348 area. It may even reject off this trend line. We're just going to have to watch this very carefully. We could get very close to 348 and just reject, and then just continue to sell off. And if we end up losing 344, there's a risk of it coming down to 342, if not 340 all over again. So look for a little rebound, then a rejection, and more potential downside as the trend looks bearish. And watch this thing potentially get close to the lower 340s. Still looks a bit more bearish temporarily, at least as of right now. Tesla, whoops, I think I clicked on the wrong chart. Looking at Tesla right now, it's also looking very weak. I say that because Tesla has this strong downtrend that's being respected, and we're going to be watching these imbalances. So I mean, I could see Tesla make an attempt to get back to about this 210 area. If we break it, watch 212. So somewhere around here, I could see Tesla trying to rebound towards, but then might just reject and continue to sell off as time goes on. If you look at the current trend, it's just continuing to make lower highs and lower lows, except for right here. You can see Tesla hit 203. It looks to me like it's going to revisit 203 very soon, at least before FOMC. So we might see Tesla rebound like this. It could get very close to this 210 area. If it breaks, this 212 is technically on the table. We need to close above 212 for there to be some potential for the bulls. As of right now, Tesla has failed to do so. It keeps on downtrending. So either it rejects here, maybe like up here, and then just comes right back down. And we just continue to sell off towards our very strong demand zone around this 202.5 to 203.5 area. And if we lose it, 200 is coming. So be very careful as a Tesla investor. There could be more downside coming. But don't forget, like I said before, we're looking very bearish approaching FOMC, right? The market may like pop and then drop. But everything can change after FOMC. The market could still turn bullish after that, possibly. So always be prepared for anything after FOMC. But for now, approaching it, we still look bearish. Looking at Nvda, it's also looking a little weaker because the large head and shoulders is still playing out. It's actually very large. I'd have to go on like the 4-hour time frame just to show you this. So on Nvda, we have this head and shoulders. That's very massive. We have one smaller one here. We also have the bigger one way up here. It's still continuing to downtrend. There could be more risks of downside for Nvidia, but it depends on if it can hold above 400 or not. But I believe the most probable move is going to be, something very similar to that of SPY and Aapl. I think the whole market is going to move very similarly. So I think that Nvidia is going to rebound tomorrow because we have a double bottom like formation. It's going to make an attempt to go a little higher, but it's going to fail. We may try to make our way up towards this imbalance right here at this 414 area, if not around this 411 area. So these tops right over here could act as our resistance. And then Nvidia could just reject after that. So look for a little rebound. It's also forming like a flag right here. So a little rebound towards this 411 to 414 area, then a rejection, and may just continue to sell off and get very close to 400. If we lose 400, there's some minor support at 398 and 395. If we lose 395, we're going to head all the way down to 390, if not 386. So there is a risk of more downside, and I think the odds favor the downside now. But watch the rebound and see if Nvidia could try to hold support. See how it tries to hold up first, and just know that the most likely move is going to be a little pop and drop. And we are still looking bearish approaching FOMC as we get closer to it. The market's going to likely continue to downtrend. Even if we do get a little rebound first, we could just continue to sell off later. And I think that after FOMC, that's when the real move is going to come. So we'll just be waiting for that. That's it for now for the main five. I'm just going to go over a couple of others very briefly and very, very quickly. SoFi may rebound towards 7.1. That's very close to our resistance at the 20 EMA, then reject and continue to sell off towards 6.8. Looking at Microsoft has been holding up a little better after getting some decent earnings, but it's barely testing and holding its 200 EMA. Watch it retest 332 and potentially reject between 332 and 335 and just continue a little lower to retest 328. So a little pump and drop is what I'm anticipating from Microsoft. For AMD, still on a downtrend and not looking the best. It's been continuing to make lower highs and lower lows over the last couple of weeks. So I believe that AMD is going to be testing 97.21. If it gets above that, we could get closer to about 100 and then reject, or we just reject off 97.21. I see a little pump coming, then a potential drop and a rejection either off that level or the next one. And then watch for a little pump and drop throughout the markets. I just think that it's going to perpetuate. Looking at the VIX, the same thing is going on with it. The VIX is still not looking like it's done just yet. There's a possible slanted head and shoulders developing, so we could see the VIX reject here and come back down towards 20 just a little bit because of the market rebounding. But the VIX could always bounce again as the market continues to sell off. And I think that there is still more risk to the downside. It's not really done yet. The dollar is barely holding the 50 EMA. It might downtrend a little bit more. We could retest 106.37, causing the market to potentially pump a little bit, but then it could bounce right here, kind of like bounce a bit, causing the market to slow down. Just like how Aapl could go up to like 170, then reject, right? This is telling us the same thing about the market. The whole market could kind of like follow Aapl a little bit higher before we get another rejection for another sell-off, at least approaching FOMC. Coinbase is also looking more bearish, going to be looking for a retest of 72.5. If we manage to break it, then 75.76 is on the table. If we fail to do so, look for another rejection as we have a potential bearish wedge forming. And we could be watching for 68 coming on Coinbase. It's looking more bearish so far. So a little rebound, then a rejection. It looks very probable. For Google, it's also looking kind of weak. If you look at the chart, actually, we have a slight bullish divergence. We could see this thing rebound a little towards this 125 area, but it could reject and continue lower because the daily has not confirmed this bounce just yet. So it's still looking kind of weak on the daily. So I'm going to be looking for a little rebound. I think we could be back testing 125, then reject and get a back test of the 200 EMA. I'm going to be watching this 122.4 support, if not around 120. We still look very weak on the daily, so I'm not too convinced of a massive bounce yet. It still looks kind of weak. Look for a little rebound first. It could rebound a little bit towards 125 plus, and then reject, and then continue to trade from there. On Amazon, after earnings had come out, we saw Amazon hold up decently, but we have this big gap on the daily. So we're going to be watching to see if Amazon pops a little bit towards 130, then rejects. And if we end up losing 125, this gap could get filled all the way down towards 120, leading Amazon to downtrend a little bit. If that's the case, this could cause more potential downside for the market. So be very careful as Amazon is still on a downtrend. It depends on if we reject and lose 125, and there's a risk of that happening. So watch 125 as key support on Amazon. For Meta on the daily charts, okay, we're below our 50 EMA, and we're actually, our daily 200 EMA is all the way down at 261. So that's actually very interesting to see. Meta is looking like it's forming another potential flag. So I could see it pump a little bit more towards this 300 area, just a tiny bit, then reject and continue to sell off towards this 290 support down here. And if that fails us, we're going to be watching this next support at 288. So there is potential downside for Meta. Look for a little pop and drop. And we're continuing to look the same as the rest of the market. All right, so that's it for now, guys. Thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely incredible rest of the day. I'll see you guys in the next one. Market to the moon because the long term is still very bright despite these short term fluctuations. And peace out.